It's no coincidence that Diavolo literally means a devil. But was it truly the devil incarnate, or merely a man who donned the devil's mantle? To answer that, we must look at the layers of symbolism, psychology, and fate that intertwine with these characters, and what we find is a figure who embodies the devil archetype in almost every way, opposing the golden spirit of the protagonist, Giorno Giovanna himself. But before that, if you enjoy this type of content, the goal is 20k, so if you enjoy, sub up. Diavolo was born to a mother who hadn't been with a man for over 2 years, and even stranger, she wasn't pregnant earlier that same day. And for a human being to become 9 months pregnant in just a few hours is impossible. That alone clearly points out that Diavolo is not an ordinary human. In the anime, the symbolism goes even further. The newborn doesn't cry, his eyes are wide open, as well as shifting colors. And if you want to dig deeper, she likely got pregnant in a few hours or instantly, considering she started going into labor and yelled out immediately after that. And in Christianity, a sudden or miraculous pregnancy immediately calls to mind the Virgin Mary and the birth of Christ. But it also makes you question if it's right to make that connection, since here, the child's name is eventually Diavolo, meaning the devil. Araki is most likely playing with inverted symbolism, or either Araki may have used this to imply a form of spiritual impregnation, and people often get confused, wondering which personality was the first one, Doppio or Diavolo. But I think his birth alone makes the answer clear. Diavolo is the first and the one in control, but we'll get to that later. In esoteric terms, a spiritual birth implies the origin, a being whose essence existed first and the body simply appeared to house it. That explains why Diavolo arrives fully formed as a personality, while Doppio feels more like a mask the psyche created just to keep the vessel stable. With this interpretation, he'll be a child almost born outside of time, foreshadowing the exact stand he develops. King Crimson skips time and only leaves the conclusion, similar to how there was no process leading up to the mother's pregnancy, but only the result of it. But then comes the question of who is Doppio. When Polnareff saw Doppio and Diavolo, he interpreted their situation using the familiar framework of multiple personalities, where trauma splits the psyche and a secondary personality absorbs the pain the original self cannot endure. But as I explained earlier with Diavolo's birth, this isn't the dynamic here. Doppio isn't a fragment born from trauma, but he's something fundamentally different. Polnareff's point still gives us a useful angle though. In dissociative identity disorder cases, the memories held by one identity often never return to the host, and the fortune teller scene captures this perfectly. Doppio is confused as the fortune teller uncovers pieces of Diavolo's past, yet the moment that truth creeps too close, it's Diavolo, the true core, who erupts in rage, even saying he's getting too close to the truth. The past belongs to him alone, so Doppio isn't sharing a life with Diavolo, but he's merely occupying the space Diavolo refuses to let anyone see. Unintentional emptiness hangs over him, and most noticeably, every time Diavolo speaks to Doppio, it follows the exact same ritual. Doppio finds a phone, answers it, obeys it, and this pattern exists to ensure he never questions who he is, while reinforcing the idea that he's a creation whose only purpose is to be used by the devil. But to add on to this, there are a few scenes that reinforce this idea, but the most revealing one is when Bucciarati, already blind and half dead, is being guided across the street by Doppio. Doppio suddenly freezes and he realizes Mista and Trish are headed toward the Colosseum. And right then, he receives a call from Diavolo. The moment Diavolo's presence floods into him, something changes in the entire atmosphere of the scene. What's fascinating is that at the exact instant Diavolo's essence manifests inside Doppio, Trish feels it. She stops and says intuitively, he suddenly appeared. She literally senses him from a signature or pattern of his soul. And that same moment, Bucciarati, who can only perceive the world through souls, looks at Doppio and sees Trish inside of a young boy. He even asks this Trish if she didn't see a boy just now, unable to perceive Doppio's physical form because Diavolo's spiritual shape or scent has descended over him. And what really sets this interpretation is what Diavolo himself says. Bucciarati is looking at you, but he doesn't see you. Bucciarati is already a corpse. All he can see is the shape of your soul. All he can hear is the energy of your soul. Trish's soul and mine have a similar scent. That's what I gave you now. Considering Diavolo inhabited Doppio's form during his relationship with Donatella, it becomes much clearer. She recognizes the signature of the being who created her, the same spiritual imprint she carries in her blood. And Diavolo confirms this himself. Trish responds to his soul, not Doppio's. Because Doppio isn't her father, Diavolo is the main personality. And if he is the true self, then Doppio may not be a psychological split at all, only a creation. Diavolo needed a subordinate who would never betray him, someone who wouldn't question him. And what's safer than creating a subordinate who literally is you? And the symbolism of this runs deeper than psychology. Doppio's name literally means double, and that alone reveals his true purpose. A double suggests duplication, a copy laid atop something stronger. In this way, his existence mirrors a classic form of the devil's deception, not a doctrine one, but a recurring symbolic pattern in which the demonic hides himself behind a harmless facade, dividing identity so the true force remains unseen. From there, Diavolo's own name could connect to Diabolos, the earliest root of the devil, but in its original meaning, it's the one who casts apart, the one who forces separation between souls, and that matches the narrative far better. And again, this symbolism runs even deeper when he places it within the Christian framework that Araki references throughout JoJo. Giorno Giovanna is literally the son of Dio, and Dio in Italian means God. Giorno represents a miracle birth, a child with a divine lineage who heals, awakens, and restores. God Experience breathes life into the lifeless, and he even performs what are essentially symbolic resurrections, like saving Bucciarati's broken body, restoring his consciousness long after death should have taken him. And later, after Narancia in Giorno's body dies, Giorno's body is shown in a pose reminiscent of a crucifixion, only to rise again later, then with the Requiem, as if transformed. Although with this in mind, if you return to the birth of Diavolo, the symbolism still represents the birth of Christ. And yet, what if that symbolism carries a double meaning? The fortune teller describes Diavolo's condition as having two lives, the light and the shadow. So what if Doppio, within that framework, represents a reflection of the light, a Christ-type figure, or more accurately, a parallel to Giorno himself? When we first see Doppio's past, he's taking care of a frog, relieved he didn't crush it when a car sped by. That immediately brings to mind Giorno's fight with leaky-eyed Luca, where Giorno insists that the innocent frog shouldn't be harmed. But while the actions of these two look similar, the lies behind them could not be more different. Giorno's childhood was defined by neglect, abuse, and loneliness. His mom practically forgot about him, his stepdad beat him, and he got bullied by kids at school. But his life changed with an encounter, saving the life of a man who happened to be a gangster. That inspired him. It awakened in him a sense of purpose to rise above his circumstances and become a new kind of gangster, one who uses power for justice. Doppio, however, stands on the opposite side of that same symbolic mirror. Despite being raised by a priest, he never became a force for good. Instead, he is dragged into darkness, either possessed or completely overshadowed by the devil within him. Yet his core innocence still shines through. We see it when he leaps into the street to save a tiny bug, acting instinctively, and right after Diavolo emerges to eliminate the fortune teller who saw through Doppio's facade, he returns back to his Doppio form, worried only about whether the bug survived. In the anime, we see how Diavolo steps out of the shadow and into the light to become Doppio, transforming from evil into someone pure. And there's also another parallel hidden in his actual ability. Doppio is assigned Epitaph, the power to see the future, yet he himself cannot erase time like Diavolo. Instead, he must confront that future directly to move forward and challenge the outcome to reach the truth. In both Doppio and Giorno's lives, a single moment defines their trajectory, but where Giorno's moment elevates him toward the light path, Doppio's moment is followed by a darker destiny, and that contrast reinforces a deeper truth, that small events can change a life, but depending on the soul, the path can lead towards salvation or into the shadow that consumes it. So if Giorno is framed as a Christ figure, the Son of God who heals the world, then his natural opposite in the narrative becomes unmistakable. And to answer the question of this video, Diavolo is not just the devil, but he is the Antichrist figure, the supposed king who rises in the shadows, the false ruler who opposes the true inheritor of the future. Giorno's destiny is to rebuild Passione, a world that invokes the passion of Christ, the suffering and sacrifice that led to redemption. Meanwhile, Diavolo is a king who has ruled Passione as a perversion of that idea, a mockery of spiritual leadership, a man who hides his face, denies his daughter, and denies the process of life. That is why their powers oppose each other so perfectly. Gold Experience Requiem forces reality back into truth. If Diavolo tries to escape sin, it returns him to its consequences. It will be a future that never arrives for a man who ran from his past.